With that, let's hand it over to Angie and the students.
Yay!
I want to bring these closer together. Yeah, you can come on to the side if you guys
All right, everyone. We are so excited. Thank you to these four lovely students who decided on their day with no classes, they would come spend it in front of over 100 teachers. Yeah! So this is going to be open Q&A format, but I thought we would start with a couple questions. I do have some backup questions if you all have no questions, but I doubt that is true. But to start, I would love each student, you could please introduce yourself, your names, your grade, and please give us an AI tool that you yourself are a big fan of, and what do you use it for? Jackson, you want to start?
Yep, I'm Jackson. I'm a senior, and one of the AI tools that I often use is ChatGPT, especially for critiquing proofs. I think it's really good at that. You can find a lot of players and help you work those out.
Well, not.
Yeah. Liam.
Hi, I'm Liam. I'm in 11th grade. I like to also using ChatGPT, and I love using it as a study partner, especially for like language tests where I want a practice test and taking a practice test.
Hi, I'm Leah. I'm a 12th grader, and I use Claude a lot. Right now, I'm working on a project on designing a video game, and it's kind of like integrating AI into the game ideally. And I've been using Claude for ideas on how to integrate certain, like, I guess, just technical aspects of the game, planning it out, and even like building storyline and characters and things like that, just to see what it comes up with.
I'm Aryan, I'm a senior, and I'm a big fan of using Claude for college essays.
Enough said. All right, so start thinking about your questions. I think is Laura going to help you rather than maybe. We'll see if you got the question. So I'll start with the question. This was, I think, came up quite a bit on the faculty survey. What do you wish your teachers knew, or that we may actually misunderstand about how students use AI? Next year, quickly, and then we'll first, you give me a look. Oh, you fired.
Before we get into this panel, I think it's important to keep in mind that all of us are high schoolers, and even so, we're all upperclassmen, so we've all been exposed to AI at a much later stage in life than many of y'all students will be. So I'm personally of the opinion that AI should be introduced at a little bit of a later stage in life and education. But I think one thing I'd like teachers to know is that being open with AI use policies always is helpful. I've found the teachers that I've been the most successful in their classes, and I've been successful in using AI successfully in those classes without, not understanding the content or using it as like a cheat, have been the teachers that are the most open, and not just, that doesn't just mean being willing to talk about it. It also means, in my opinion, being open to the use of it and being liberal with the use of it, because I think when we see it as something that's like, this tool is going to get used no matter what happens in the next, 5 or so years and how it progresses, I think it's important to not put a hard no on it and be open to using it for some case.
Yeah, I think being aware of the magnitude of this is really important. You can think of it kind of like the AI assistants are now in every subject except maybe English and art. Like ChatGPT and the other AI assistants are just better than high schoolers. Like it's better at math than me, it's better at coding than me, and I'm the robotics programming team leader. It is really good. So you kind of have to think about it. I need to find that it would be fair for you to give to a high schooler ChatGPT to solve. And that means that every student in their house has the answer key to every piece of homework you assign. And that's kind of what you need to be thinking of it as. And that kind of merits a lot of thinking about when you want to get out homework, when you want to do things in class, like how you're going to design that homework.
Adding on to that, while it is like an answer key for every single math assignment or among other things, I will say that can be super useful because if, for example, on a math project, if I'm stuck on the first problem, I need to know how to do that first problem to complete the rest of the packet. So if I want an example of how to do this type of math, I can ask ChatGPT, hey, can you give me an example problem of how to do X or something like that?
Yeah, I would say for the writing heavy subjects, it's important to know that like the AI is an amazing tutor, even if I don't think it's a good idea to have it generate ideas, of course, but like I write my own arguments, I find my evidence, and I construct an outline, and then I can ask you like, what do you think of this? And I don't know, like have it critique me, and in some cases it can be helpful, and others it's not that helpful, and therefore like it's just important that I'm able to make that judgment because in the end it is my work and like my understanding of what I'm trying to say. So I'm still able to use it when it's helpful, not to generate things, but to give feedback.
I also just want to affirm that all of you guys are completely valid in thinking that AI is damaging to students, cognitive power. I can say for sure in time periods that I've used more AI. I can tell I can't solve math problems quick enough, or I can't, think of creative things to say in my writing. So I just want to affirm that concern, and that's something I think we'll talk about more later in the panel.
Also, one thing is do not use AI detectors. They are really famously terrible. If you put in the Constitution, it will say 100 pictures AI generated. And one of the main problems is because they're public, like the ones you're accessing the same students have access to. The students who use ChatGPT will edit their thing until it gets down to a low percent. And in fact, almost everyone has a built-in humanizer AI that will go over it and modify it until it gets down to 0%. And also, because they're not accurate and because there's this possible problem where only students who are cheating are optimizing for it, you just have a super, super high false positive rate. And I think that most essays that, I'm sure that most essays that would trigger the detector would be made by humans. So you really can't trust it, and trusting will lead to just a huge amount of false positives.
And I think Patrick had a question.
Patrick has a question. Patrick, Dean has a mic for you.
Okay, how do y'all feel about the perhaps significantly increasing the rate that new classes census as a way to still incentivize y'all, all of y'all taking classes with me? When we replace dollar sets with exams and things like that, do you feel like this is a positive way to still encourage you to do some of that skill building on your own?
I think this definitely is one of the better solutions. It does have the downsides of, in-class assignment, which means you have to do class to take taking up class time to limited scope because you only have one class. And I think we're all familiar with the problems with in-class assignments, but it does basically, it's very good for preventing additives.
Yeah, I agree with Jack completely. I think it's a good way to ensure that students know how to solve things on their own. But I think one issue with that is it does kind of go against the new way of teaching and being more loose and liberal and letting students learn at their own pace. So I think doing something like that is perfect as long as students can reassess or assessments are lower stakes. But I think that is definitely a valid solution.
I also will say, if they don't understand the comment or the topic, if you have the normal amount of assessments, if it is still in class and they've been using ChatGPT the entire time, then they're going to fail that test also.
Okay, Lindy. Oh, over there. I'm sorry.
Hi. A few of you have commented on using it as a tool versus a tool that protects your own understanding that you already have versus as a crutch. I'm curious how you distinguish for yourself between the two. What processes and methods do you use to self-reflect to tell when you're using it as a tool versus a crutch, and how might we incorporate that in the classroom as a practice?
One thing that I always make sure I do is that I try doing the assignment first without the use of AI. And once I hit a roadblock where all I can do is go to a teacher and ask them, I'll ask ChatGPT, and it will be here's a way you can go about doing this, or here is how you did this wrong, or here's how you can improve.
Yeah, I think it's important that because Jackson mentioned that the AI can just give you the answer, but you can also prompt engineer it to help you find an answer on your own, like a teacher would. So that's, I think, what Ian's emphasizing, is that you can, when you get stuck, you just use it as you would use a teacher during school, except you can use it at home, maybe when it's super late and the teacher's obviously not going to apply. Yeah. I've also noticed that, I guess it depends on the subject, but if I'm, let's say, like, coding, I just have to be able to understand, like, the, I guess, maybe coding's not the best example because it is going to, like, be overrun by AI, but I have to understand what the code is actually saying as well, and, otherwise, I don't think it'd be fair for me to use it. And, like, language, I have to, know all of the words and how to be used, and, like, something that I've actually learned in class, if I were to use it as a tutor, or, like, yeah, doing the work for me first.
Lindsay, I think.
Yeah, hi. I have a similar question to just this last question, but it was slightly different. Because Leah, you mentioned that you sometimes use it to critique your own work, and that sometimes it's like really good at critiquing your work, and sometimes the thing that it gives back to you is critiques you dismiss as like not so good. My question is, especially for the next generation coming up who's been using AI a lot more, how is it that you have learned to distinguish between these two opportunities, and specifically how can teachers support students in learning that skill as good as possible, right? Because if you're going to use AI, like, the one thing I want to make sure is that my students are going to actually get decent things from it and not very poor misunderstandings.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the only reason why I'm able to, like, judge whether it's giving me good feedback or not is because I already know what a good, like, essay would look like, and I've already learned those skills without AI. I'm not exactly sure, like, how you would have other students, except for, like, yeah, they have to build that skill as well, and that might have to be without the use of AI so that they can create those arguments. At least I'm thinking, like, in context of history and English, those kind of classes.
Yeah, adding on to what already said was, like, you want to make sure that you are introducing it at a later age. Like, if students throughout middle school, I don't think I would have benefited from having AI during middle school, because if I had AI during middle school, I don't think I would have learned some core key concepts, or even like 9 or at the beginning of semesters, for example. So once you actually get into the flow of things and you're trying to repeat the process to ingrain it into yourself, I feel like that's where AI becomes useful, because it's like you now know somewhat of what the final product should look like. You're just trying to do it again.
Yeah, and AI does have some like patterns where it will get things wrong. If you tell it to do something that is impossible, it will often, like, try to prove something that's impossible. It will oftentimes, there's a red proof that gets close and then just say it did it. Because it always wants to, it is very hard for an AI to refuse what you tell it to do. So that's generally, you should be primed for looking out for it telling you what you asked it to tell you. But aside from that, it's just kind of the ways you figure out whether it's wrong are the same ways to figure out what, like, anything is wrong, right? If, like, you know, if a student wrote something and when AI wrote something, you can tell they're wrong for the same reasons. They're like logical contradictions and things that don't quite make sense, and just like be on the lookout for this.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is you cannot stop students from using AI or even cheating with AI. So it's better to, make them use it responsibly. So I think if you all can learn how to, use AI well and then teach prompt engineering, for example, in the context of your own class, and if each teacher can do that, I think that'll be amazingly benefiting to every single student.
Yeah, you guys kind of just answered this, but I'll just say it again. So I teach middle school math, and I was using AI to check my answer key this morning. I think I half the problems wrong. So how no one's going to make a lot of mistakes. So you guys kind of said that you have to understand what's going on to recognize mistakes. But how often do you find yourself sort of not recognizing mistakes and getting yourself in trouble because it's issues of middle school math?
One thing I will say is it usually does the processed correctly. It just has like one long number here or there. And it's really helpful if you're doing one problem at a time, because if I go one problem and it has the wrong answer, I will pick up that it is the wrong answer when I'm trying to follow how it did the math.
And then also prompting matters a lot. If you just give it a problem, it'll solve it some of the time. And I feel like it usually does if you give it a problem. But if you walk through it and give it the right prompting, you can bring that success rate up significantly. And so, and like the students have practiced this a lot, and so they'll be able to get better results from AI than people who have not really used it before.
Can you clarify what you mean by the right prompting? Because I'm just like cutting and pasting your problem and putting it in.
Yeah, so one of the really fun things about AI is that you can just tell it to do a good job, and it will, because it is fundamentally what AI is doing is predicting the most likely next token. And generally with the problem, the most likely next thing is the solution. But if you specify to do it well, the most likely good solution, it'll get you the most likely good solution. And this is like a real effect. It's pretty incredible. But if you tell it like the method you want to use and specific things like to think about, then that can make it more likely to get the correct answer.
Yeah, and I will make this colorful with that response to this problem.
Yeah, so
you're actually enrolled in the kind of thing for you. And well, in all likelihood, if your job is serious, so you should be like, you'll have an assistant. I guess my question is, do you trust us to choose which skills are worth you knowing how to do on your own, or do you want to be like part of that conversation? It's like a tool. So it's like, how do you know what's worth knowing on your own?
I think some of that will happen implicitly. Like if you have a set of tasks to do, people will naturally like figure out what parts they need to understand well and what parts they can sort of offload. I think like people are generally decent at finding their own direction. Like if I give a math problem, like if I'm familiar with the kind of problem, I'll know which parts are important where I make mistakes, and if I'm using AI, like where the AI often makes mistakes, and so which parts I want to like go over and check. And I think just in terms of skills, like there's some things where I will be more willing to use AI, some things will be less willing to use AI, and I kind of came to that just by like trying on both. And so I think some of that is able to happen implicitly.
I think sushi happens.
Yeah, I think you answered a lot of the time, but I'm curious. So you talked about a sort of like minimum age or minimum level of like development or thought process or experience with a particular task before you kind of start using AI. And I'm curious, what would you say, first, what age does that come to mind for you personally? And B, what would you say to that younger student about starting AI usage?
I can start with the first half. I felt like for me, I kind of in AI started becoming big, which was around 9th, 10th grade. That was the best years for me. I felt like that was perfect timing because I was starting to form these base level skills while also starting to learn how to incorporate AI as a tool or a study part. I don't have a clear answer on BD yet.
I agree on the 10th grade 100%. I think you want to, it's a delicate balance because you want to have developed skills before you enter AI, but you don't want to be so late in life that you have to develop like your AI skills completely independent of your previous skills. So yeah, I agree that 10th grade is a perfect age to like start incorporating that into the curriculum more. As for what you should say to the little kids who just want to ChatGPT their whole physics homework or something and to send it into their teacher, I think maybe like assessments again would be a good solution to that. Because I think at that age is an age where you maybe need to force them a little more to not use AI. And there's not really a great way to do that outside of class. So ensuring that you're teaching content in class and making sure every single student understands all the content, just being very meticulous with that, I think will be important.
All right, we might have to, so you can show me there's like at least 5 more questions, so we're gonna kind of lightning round, guys. You got this, you got this. Okay, Sean, go.
Okay, thank you guys for being here. How is AI impacting their social and emotional lives?
Ashley?
Not particularly at all.
It's more fun because I can ask it really random things and just like experiment with how the AI is built and I guess like how it's using all the world's information online.
Who's next? Where did he run into? Right there! Yeah! Hello.
Okay, so my question is, now I've heard through the global grapevine, aka the internet, that people are thinking about that in the future AI will replace teachers, whatever that means. And my question for you all is, I heard a few of you say, yeah, like it feels like having a teacher, like I'm getting the feedback that what the teacher would give me and things like that. Do you feel as students that you could see AI being more useful than your teacher feedback, or is it that it just gives more feedback and you wish your teachers gave more feedback, that kind of thing?
I think, well, what I was saying before is like it can give you help late at night when you don't have a teacher, but I don't think it's to the quality of teachers, or at least when we have teachers. I don't know.
Aww. Thank you. And?
I would compare it to like the difference between fast food and fine dining. Like, fast food is a lot.
Which one are we?
Fast food is a lot easier to get. It's not as high quality, but it's still something. While fine dining will definitely be a more pleasurable experience, but it's harder to reach.
A lot of, you can definitely get most of the way there. Like for most things, I think an AI will eventually get there. But for the last couple, they're like very difficult things that really require, like will require a human for much longer. So, like the first, half is way easier than the second half. The first 75% is way easier than the next 25%. So even if, like, for a lot of things, I can just like have an AI. For that rest of it, I still will need a teacher. So I think it's pretty far off from fully replacing humans because you have to get to 1%, and even the first 95% is probably easier than the last 5%.
Hi, I was just wondering how you make the decision about when is a good moment to use AI, because in my experience, what you're calling prompt engineering can often be sort of like a cat chasing its tail, and it doesn't ever give me exactly what I want, and it's maybe inherent with error. So given that risk, how do you make that decision?
Oh yeah, I think I have a thought.
I think there are 2 scenarios in which a student decides to use AI. The first is in which they understand the concept well, and AI is a great tool, for example, in like a computer science class to get a lot of the grunt work done and save them hours and hours of time. That first use case is perfectly fine, I think. And the second use case is when a student is either stressed or feeling lazy or depressed or something, and they don't feel like doing their schoolwork, so they use AI as like an answer key to just run through those problems. And I mean, the thing is, in that second scenario, it's hard to say to a student, just don't use the AI, because, it's like the natural step to, they have a problem they have a monkey on their back, and they can just get it off like that, so. I think preventing students from getting to that level where they're overstressed or burnt out will help them use AI more responsibly.
And in terms of what it will work on and what it won't work on, I think some of that is experience. There are some problems where you really won't be able to get an AI to do it. But if you, generally, one of my heuristics, outside of just prior knowledge, is if it fails 3 times in a row, then it's probably not going to be able to get it. But if I use contact, I usually get it within that 3, or it will just never happen. And I have definitely spent a few hours trying to get it to solve a problem, and it just hasn't been able to.
And our last question might be coming from
You mentioned a few times that AI is currently already better than high schoolers at just about everything, and it's continuing to get better. Has it ever raised for you, or in conversation with your friends, the question of, if that's true, why are we learning things? And if so, what is your answer to that question?
So what learning how to apply those skills. It's kind of, we were mentioning this a while ago when we were first talking about coming here, but we're all kind of project managers in a way, because we need to learn how to apply those skills. Like AI might know how to do these specific things, but we need to know where those specific things are useful.
Or in my mind, it's kind of like the same as why do we have computer scientists when the AI can write code now? It's like you still need those people to understand the AI and you like know how to use it. So it can just be applied to any subject.
First of all, I love your haircut, Lana. I think it's a very scary scenario if we offload 100% of our knowledge into AI, because the thing is, like Jackson said, it's an answer key, but the thing is, every once in a while it will get a problem wrong, and if no one knows, that's really dangerous, not just to education, but like to our society as a whole. So, I mean, being able to understand and go through it with the AI's workflow is still going to be an incredibly important skill.
Jackson?
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier, but like sort of like 95%, 5%, like it is very, like the AI currently, you know, can do, like if I want a code written, almost always an AI will be able to like write it or a portion of it, but sometimes it can't. And also for any given skill or subject area, I think maybe without like, you know, as you get through high school, certainly as you get into college, you can beat the AI in like any area, but not in every area. Like, you can kind of learn to be a better writer than it, but then you probably haven't spent the necessary time to get better at, like, math. Or if you are better at coding, then maybe you're not better at writing. And so there are certain trade-offs where, like, humans can be more specialized. And also, just the AI isn't reliable enough to take all of it because, it, you know, it's easier to get most of the way than all the way.
All right, friends, I think we've gone a little over time because you guys have our questions. But let's take that amazing There's no time at that time, so you might be too long.